My name is Jenny Moore, and I'm Associate Curator at the New Museum, and you are here at NYC 1993, Experimental Jet Set Trash and No Star, on view through the end of May. I think now that we've kind of divested ourselves of the 80s, both in terms of the art that was being produced then and the kind of cultural events that were happening then, we turned our curatorial sights to the 90s, and we were thinking about the early 90s. And we realized pretty quickly that 1993 was a very significant year for a number of reasons. For the exhibitions that were happening that year, for the artists that broke and had their first exhibitions that year. And it was exciting to think about a kind of time capsule, a kind of core sample of art that was being made or exhibited in New York in 1993. So the premise of the exhibition is that. For people to think about it nostalgically, there's this romantic notion of this kind of the last bohemia in New York City, or this last kind of gritty urbanity, and that existence is what a lot of the artists were dealing with in many of the works in the exhibition. And it's something that, although we may not be able to relate to because that's not the landscape we have, it's fascinating to look back and see how much has changed, and in some ways how much hasn't changed. So this is an installation by the artist Pepin Osorio. He presented this in 1993 at the Whitney Biennial, and it's called The Scene of the Crime, Whose Crime? And at the time he was doing social work in addition to his own artwork, and it presents this very kind of Baroque domestic environment, this scene, this Puerto Rican family. You're not quite sure what's happened, but you have a body on the floor, you have the music playing, you have all of the kind of accoutrements of a very rich domestic interior. And the other interesting thing in terms of this piece, that he actually has two police officers who come and kind of survey the scene and sort of sign off on it, kind of bless it in a way. And the two police officers who had quote unquote investigated the crime scene in 1993, he tracked down and they came back and re-investigated and blessed this scene for the presentation here. This is a sculptural piece by Janine Antoni called Lick and Lather, and they are self-portrait busts of chocolate and soap. The chocolate she licked or chewed or gnawed on, and the soap she washed. As I had this notion of what these pieces were in my mind when we installed them, and the first time I walked into this room, there's such this incredible smell of chocolate. You know, they become, the materiality of it is so much more present, obviously, than any image could do it justice to, and that you just kind of get lost in the detail and the action that's represented through all of these pieces. And I watch people spend a lot of time in this room, not just going from one to the other and comparing, but just being very aware of a kind of material and a different kind of representation of the self. For so many people talking about that time when they remember Matthew Barney's drawing restraint, this was such a mind-blowingly new way of experiencing art, that you would come into this very kind of cold, sterile environment, and you're kind of leaning back looking at these video pieces, which again was a very cutting edge material and medium, and some things feel very nostalgic about it, and some things still feel very fresh and new. And it's been very exciting for people to come back and relive their experience of this piece, or have the experience of it for the first time. On this floor, the fourth floor, we have an installation of work by Felix GonzalezTorres. He was showing that year at Andrea Rosen Gallery with an installation of these two pieces, this large billboard, that kind of the bird flying down, the bird flying up, and then this installation Untitled Couple, The String of Lights. So that was on view in New York in 1993, along with a carpet by Rudolf Stingel, which is the large orange carpet. And it's been interesting that since that time, both of those artists have kind of taken divergent paths, but they were collaborating together in 1993, and we thought, what a fantastic opportunity to kind of honor that collaboration and put work together by two artists now you don't associate together, but at the time who were working very closely. There's a sound piece by Kristen Oppenheim's Sail On Sailor, which is the piece that you hear looping, and then we have an installation of photographs by Zoe Leonard, and then a piece around the corner is another really beautiful piece, a very evocative piece by Robert Cobert, which is The Prison Window. And Cobert, another artist that was doing really important work that year, had a major exhibition at the Dia Art Center that year in 1993. And this, again, for me, is this really incredibly iconic piece, something that, although I have seen since 1993, every time I see it, it's just an incredibly powerful piece. So we thought about bringing all these artists together in a more maybe poetic manner. There were times where there were just, by sheer luck of, oh, that totally goes together. You can have assumptions about things, and then when you get them into a space, they make formal relationships, or they make conceptual relationships that you might not have been aware of while you're planning it out on paper, and then you have a really kind of fortuitous event where, okay, this is why it clicks. This is something that we can do in terms of our work by putting something together, and maybe the audience will see different aspects of it than they might have if it was installed in a different way.